are watching Notepad. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. This evening, we will be talking about jobs of the future, the kind that have not been created yet or the kinds that are existing today but will be refined further in the future. The World Economic Forum consistently publishes the Future of Jobs report, and this year they argued that because of the global slowdown coming back on the form of the globally induced pandemic, we've seen how the future jobs of the future have been accelerated, and because of this, it's important for us to actualize how we, the workforce, can prepare ourselves to be work ready for these jobs when they do arrive, if they haven't so already. So joining me in this conversation are two highly illustrious gentlemen, Brian as well as Atasha, talking about these conversations and try to see where the opportunities lie, and perhaps also look into the kind of challenges that we have to overcome. We'll start with you, Brian. Let's take a look into the kind of important understanding that we need to have because a 2017 study by the Institute of the Future talked about the kind of jobs that will take place. What would be the I guess understanding that we need to have in order for us to better prepare ourselves when future jobs do arrive on our shores?
Thanks, Ibrahim. Well, in fact, I would say it would be unproductive to try to predict a particular job and prepare for it, as there are too many variables. Right now, I think what the market is speaking is try to predict what's the future job like. So what we should do, in fact, is to ensure that our trajectory is set at the right direction. Trajectory here refers to the path that we choose today that can help us to build the jobs of the future, allowing us to branch out for more relevant opportunities. It is important for us to stay connected with our roles and in the industry and market that we are servicing, ensuring that we get the upper hand information about the movement of our industry. Take coding for an example. As all of us are aware, coding is a really powerful digital skill to acquire in this day and age. The first coding language was developed by a woman, namely Ada Lovelace, back then in the year of 1843. Over the past centuries, dozens of newer coding languages like C++, Python, and Java has been developed. It would have been impossible to predict job that utilizes coding today, back then in the year of 1843. But it is certain that those who knew the basic would have easily adapted to the newer coding languages which is invented today. In summary, if there's a formula that I can tag to the future job prediction activities, it would be to ensure that you continue to stay relevant in whatever that you're doing now, grow with this transition, and keep yourself updated in the moving trend of your role, the industry and market that you are servicing in. If we embrace this kind of mindset, we will be ready and able to find success in the future, regardless of whether or not we know what is the jobs in the future.
Let's talk now to Atasha. Foxymojo is, of course, a management consulting company that helps companies grow and accelerate that particular growth of themselves. How do you see companies of today getting themselves ready for these kind of opportunities that lie within? And more importantly, do you think that companies of today are particularly aware of the kind of challenges that is facing them in the near future?
Thanks, Ibrahim. Also a very good point brought by Brian. I believe we are living in an exciting world, but full of uncertainties. So where businesses are constantly being challenged to evolve, and I think the best way to evolve is to have the learning and growth mindset. So as a leader, we should not actually base on what we know in the past. So only think based on what we know in the past, but we also need to stay curious about the current trends, and that helps us to make good judgment. Theoretically, it may sound easy, but it takes a lot of strategic effort to actually shift the mindset. It may be a surprise that many business leaders we met are not naturally resisting change, but they resist to go through the pain of change. They like the idea of automation, they like the idea of cost saving, they like the idea of improve productivity, maybe improve the bottom line as the result of technology adoption. But that's one side of the coin. On the other side of the coin, which I call it the dark side of change, is feeling the loss of familiar faces, the loss of familiar processes, comfortable working space, the loss of environment which they have been familiar with. So of the loss is actually the trade-off of embracing change. So human brain naturally looking for threats. So that's why sometimes we may have a fearful thoughts and maybe discouraging thoughts to move forward. So as part of what we do at Foxymojo is to tell them, hey, it's all right. We are here for you. So we walk beside them. We continuously share information and best practices along the way, so they could stay relevant and move forward and stay relevant in the market.
That's an interesting point that you raised, where companies are actually, not resistant to growth and change, but sometimes getting that transformation done is important. But clearly, transformation is a big problem for a lot of companies. Brian, in your experience, do you feel that companies of today have what it takes to transform themselves, and perhaps when future workforce goers or students that are currently watching this interview, do they have a place when it comes to corporate transformation taking place, and perhaps do they have the role to play in moving a company from where they are now into what they want to be? What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think Atasha also brought up a very good point there. I think it's a mindset of the companies across the world, not only in Malaysia. So I think it's important for a company to set the right mindset to move forward. A lot of companies, the reason why they are reluctant to still move forward ahead together with this transition is they see this as an expenses, whatever that they are going to invest, instead of investing, expecting return. Most of them, they still take this as part of the expenses, which will impact their bottom line at the end of the day. So now, if you notice, of course, our government has initiated, in fact, a lot of upskilling program or provide grant to encourage employers to invest in upskilling their employees. I think this is a great initiative from the government that should be continued. From the perspective of mindset, again, as much as I say that there are still employers who treat every training investment as an expenses, we have started to see more and more employers, in fact, employees as well, job seekers, realize the importance of upskilling and reskilling. This is one part that I'm truly glad to see in the market. Hence, I would say that we are able definitely to fulfill the requirements of upcoming specialist role, including those roles which is going to be invented alongside with this transition. The only concern which I have, which is also one of the key challenges of our country, is the brain drain issue. Despite the grooming of some of the world's most talented professionals, especially in the specialist role, we fail to retain them to work in Malaysia. With this, I hope the government can really look into the ways to resolve this by identifying the gaps in technical needs that the country requires and develop a structure to retain and attract back the local talents who are able to fill up all these gaps.
Yeah, I think the brain drain issue has been extensively discussed, and I think the government is trying their best, but the kind of outcome might not be as desirable as we thought it would be. But the brain drain issue aside, another key thing that the government has to look at is, of course, changing our education system. When we talk about Industry 4.0, we're talking about automation, and of course, we're talking about robotics, and perhaps more science involved, and perhaps more humanities involved in making, the computers and the machines a little bit more accessible to humans, people like you and me. How do you think the education system needs to be revamped in order for the government to equip the students of today to meet the needs of tomorrow?
I think indeed most of the upcoming generation would have picked up the basic technology skill on their own. But we are aware that there are many who simply do not have the luxury to still do this at home. Hence, school play a big role when it comes to this transition, which is to expose all the children to technology through the learning and educational system that we will be setting forward. Coding, programming, algorithm would be a great basic skills which schools should continue to develop for their students. A deep understanding on how computer, AI, and also machine work would definitely be beneficial for them. More importantly, I think besides structuring the theoretical part of the education system to equip the students with the required skill, I think it's also important for us to focus on developing their mindset. Mindset here refers to the mindset to embrace the culture of lifelong learning. It's also important to teach them how to learn and make the process of learning enjoyable for them, so it remains ingrained as they enter into the adulthood. With the right mindset and educational system, this will make them more receptive and adaptive to changes, meaning that they are less likely to face things such as digital disruption, as they will likely be adapting to this disruption, I think, faster than we have been in our past.
Yeah, Brian, that's a very good point. Atasha, I see you nodding there a few times when you talk about changing the mindset. I got two questions for you. Number one, how important or how crucial it is to change the mindset of students of today in order for them to be more receptive to prepare themselves for the jobs of tomorrow. And the second part of the question is, of course, what are the kind of expectations that students of today must have when they enter institutions of higher learning or places of training? Do you feel that the kind of expectations that they thought they had must change in order to meet the expectations of tomorrow? Atasha.
Yes. So in today's scenario, as I think Brian rightly mentioned, the continuous lifelong journey is getting increasingly important, and it's the way to go. I think today, students may not have the luxury to choose jobs compared to 10 years ago. The market is more demanding, especially for the new skill sets, and becoming more limited for the traditional jobs. So previously, you may need 20 people to perform the task, and today you may just need 5 people. So what would happen to those students or talents who are not needed? So in the past couple of months, it is quite encouraging, as Brian mentioned as well, to see collaboration between private, public, and academia in Malaysia. We see emphasis on upskilling and reskilling, and of course, we are seeing a lot more effort has been put in place by organizations like Yayasan Peneraju, Laksana, HRDF, I think Magic, MDEC to a certain extent, also Cyberview, to reduce the gap between demand and supply of talents in the market. And of course, students would need to stay curious about the current trends and make proactive effort to prepare themselves for an exciting and challenging job market. Yeah, so that's something that I have in mind.
Yeah, very crucial for us to mention the kind of efforts that the government is currently doing. But like I said, there are a lot of challenges that lie ahead, and I still want to continue on this conversation, but we have to go for a short break. When we come back, we'll discuss more about the specific jobs that we are talking about right now that is happening after this break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You are with me. I have on the line Brian, Sim, as well as Atasha. We're talking about the possibility of us changing our mindset, on us changing the system and restructure into how we work. In fact, as well as changing the education system per se in order to meet the needs of tomorrow. Let's start with you, Brian. We try to understand that some specific jobs, things that we've heard of again and again. Some of the companies have actually used and hired these people, but we're looking at app developers, e-commerce and social media specialists, automation experts, robotic engineers, blockchain specialists. How prepared do you think we are in terms of fulfilling the required needs of the marketplace with these kind of specific jobs?
So I think it's a good perspective of questions that we're looking at in this topic. So like what Atasha has brought up a few earlier. So I think a lot of government agencies right now are participating, in fact, are encouraging employers to do the learning and development program through upskilling or reskilling. In fact, I think government agencies such as like Yayasan Peneraju, HRDF, supported this program as well. And I think Kelly Services were privileged that we are able to support or given the chance to also support HRDF when it comes to the Place and Train program. I think with all these training program in place, I think Malaysia, we will have talents ready to fill up the gaps in this area. So I think I would like to see, of course, more initiative within this area, specifically being implemented, not only relying on government resources. However, government should be, of course, the key motivator here. But more importantly, I think company, which include private companies as well, we should also take initiative. Like what I've mentioned earlier, right? It's the mindset that requires in this transition or the journey of transition that all companies across need to see this as part of the investment in technology transition. That will include also investment in upskilling, providing necessary training to your staff to ensure that they are able to fill in the gap, not only within your country and not only within the country, but within your company and also industry as well.
It takes two to tango, and we talked about how the companies must be ready to do this, right? But it's also important for us to look at the second half of the equation, which is the people themselves. Not just students, but those that are currently in the workforce right now. I want to pose this question to Atasha. Do you feel that learning flexibility has to be there as well? People that are in universities or in institutions of learning, they have to start to rethink about how they gain information. That's one half. Another half is people currently in the workplace right now. Do they feel that there is a need for them to upskill and reskill themselves to meet the requirements of the companies? Do you feel that flexibility in learning is actually crucial for this to make it work for themselves as an individual to thrive in organizations that they work in?
Certainly, Ibrahim. I think it is crucial for us to adapt to ever-changing work environment and also responding to ever-evolving market demands. I think we need to strive to be comfortable being uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean that we need to constantly seek for challenges. But sometimes the situation or the work that we are required to get involved happen to be challenging. For example, the education industry. It is painful to see how COVID-19 has affected education worldwide. And educational institutions, whether they like it or not, they would need to switch to remote teaching, deliver online lectures, administer tests, and so on. After a couple of months, they have, in some form, adopted virtual teaching despite being unprepared for the change. So education is not the only industry adapting to crisis. The companies and governments are reimagining distributed workforce and also virtual collaboration. So regardless of the type of changes that we need to adapt, if we decide to take on something hard, we may not usually get 100% of what we are aiming for, but that's okay, because by putting effort to try, we make things a little bit better, but we just need to keep pressing on. So either for students or for the workforce, I think as long as you have that curiosity to follow the subject that you are passionate about, that should be the way for you to stay relevant in the market.
I think I don't know how to put this. It's good that if you know what you're passionate about, but more often than not, people are not too sure what they are passionate about. For instance, my case, right? I mean, I was told that accountants are the last to be retrenched. That is something that has been informed to me since I was a young kid. So I studied accounting. That halfway through, I decided if this is what accounting is, I'd rather die. But life took me to a place where okay, I finished the studies in accounting, worked in a bank, but then later on in life I realized okay, I'd rather be here talking to folks like you, like Brian, like Atasha, talking about a host of issues from future jobs to the economy to whatever. Um, uh, I mean, you get what I'm trying to say, right? It's not easy finding that thing, but of course, the success to finding a placement or a job or being an entrepreneur and creating jobs for many is about that discovery of finding what you're passionate about. I still want to stick with Atasha on this one. Do you feel that rather than being fearful of the future, we should embrace it, we should capitalize on it? Do you feel that even though this could pose a big challenge for us, not just as an individual or a company, but as a nation per se, do you feel that 2020 has brought about an idea where if things really do get tough, we have the ability and the opportunity to rise from it? Do you feel that now is the time for us to actually understand that whatever challenges that we are fronted with, we should be ready to take the horns and take the reins and fight through it? What's your opinion on us rising up to these challenges?
So I would like to emphasize that we are actually living in the most exciting time in history. So we could use this momentum of technology to drive lasting change. So fear to embrace change is not an option anymore if you want to stay relevant. So the secret is not to look for certainty, but to look for or continuously learn how to thrive in uncertainties. So yesterday's mindset or the old style mindset is to invest in a very sure project. Must be certain, double, triple confirmation. But that process may take quite a bit of time. And by the time you make a decision, you may have missed the boat, you may have missed the opportunity. So today's mindset is about thriving in uncertainties, make good judgment, and move fast. So related to your question as well on education earlier on, in terms of education, in terms of what to learn, I think I think it's quite a broad question. I think in general, skills development should be the focus to meet the ever-evolving industry demands. So, for example, in line with Malaysia's interest in Industry 4.0, I think what would be useful is to learn about the A, B, C, D, E, namely artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud, data analytics, and emotional intelligence. Regardless of professions that you are in, learn how these A, B, C, D, E could help you be better in whatever you do. Recently, Accenture did an interesting study. Accenture and Click did an interesting study on human impact of data literacy. They reveal 74% of employees are not comfortable with data. Because of that, it has caused the loss of productivity, which equates to billions of dollars. So data literacy is getting increasingly important across all professions. So students or the workforce can start learning about data collection, data visualization, analysis, forecast. Whether you are an accountant, engineer, or farmer, data is still the key to make the best decision. This is the best time if you want to change from where you are to where you want to be. This is like 2020 is like the reset time, the reset of everything. So you can let go or unlearn things that you know in the past, and you can just hit 2021 onward with a bang.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That was Atasha of Foxymojo as well as Brian of Kelly Services. Let's talk about what we ourselves can do to upskill and reskill ourselves to meet the challenges of 2021. It's just around the corner. If you've missed any part of this interview, just head on to astroawan.com, look for Notepad over there. If you've missed any, if you want to watch these kind of interviews on your mobile devices, it's possible as well. Just download the Astro AWANI app, wherever you get the application. Till then, thanks very much for watching. Until next time.